Dr. Gary Schwartz is a professor of psychology at the University of Arizona. About 20 years ago, he conducted the afterlife experiments, where he tested several top psychics for their ability to communicate with the dead. The experiments were conducted under ostensibly strict conditions, and these psychics included Laurie Campbell, George Anderson, John Edward, and Suzane Northrop. Schwartz proceeded on the idea that if you can find one white crow, you've disproven the claim that all crows are black. In other words, if you can find one legitimate psychic, you've disproven the skeptic's claim that all psychics are phony. According to Schwartz, the results of his experiments were positive. All of the participating psychics were white crows, with Suzane Northrop scoring the highest of the group. As it happens, a few years before these experiments, I had a private reading with Suzane Northrop. Here is that session, and you can decide for yourself if she's a white crow or not. It gets more interesting as it goes along. My name and my family.
Hello?
Hi, it's Mickey Jako.
Hi, Mickey. How
Hi.
you doing?
Okay.
Just finishing up on the phone here. Let me get the tape together. Okay. Is it getting cold in Boston?
Yeah, it just dropped. It's getting windy and
Yeah, it just dropped in New York, too.
yeah.
So
Can I?
you can certainly ask questions without a problem.
Okay.
The way I like to work is I like to tell you what I'm picking up, obviously, at the beginning, and the people that I'm picking up. And I know you have a couple people in mind.
Well, there's three you're basically interested in.
Okay.
A friend who committed suicide some years ago.
Okay.
My grandfather and my father.
Your father, right. Okay.
And just to let you know, I believe that we can communicate with the dead in that we can talk to them, but I'm not so sure about them talking back to us. So I have my doubts.
Well,
But
they
so-
do.
yeah.
They do. It's just that we have a one-way perception of how we think it's going to happen. That's really what it is. And it happens in a variety of ways. That's why when they give me stuff, people think it's like this computer printout. It's not a computer printout. I got to sometimes sort it out. Sometimes I get initials if names are complicated. There's a whole variety of ways of how I get the information here. Okay. Just quick before I start, Mickey, I got to ask you one thing. Did you come in with the name Mickey?
Come in?
Yeah, was that the name?
Into the world?
Yeah, when you were born, was that your given name? Because it doesn't sound like your given name. That's why I'm asking.
Well, my actual name is Miklos.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Yeah,
that's why I was asking, because that did. I mean, I know sometimes people change them where they go by. You know what I'm saying too. But I go by certain sounds, and it just did not sound like your birth name. First of all, I got to tell you this. I don't know if this is your dad, Mickey, or it's your father or grandfather, but I will tell you this one. One of them must have your name because they tell me your name is passed down, and I definitely think it's on your father's side. I mean, I could be backwards, but this really feels like it's on your father's side. I don't know if it's your father. It feels more like it might be your grandfather, but that's the sense I'm getting. So it's either first or middle, because they say the name is passed down.
You mean like from generation to generation?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you're either named after him. You know what I'm saying to you? That unless you named a son after it, but they say the name is passed down. So, but I feel it on your father's side. So I don't know if it was your father or your father's father. So again, I didn't know if that was your dad or your dad's dad, but that came through very, very strong this morning, as a matter of fact, even when I was having breakfast. So I knew it had to be connected to you. Now, I'm also going to tell you this, please. Was it your dad that smoked or your grandfather, Mickey?
Grandfather.
All right, because the smell of tobacco is very, very strong. I also got to tell you, when I'm in your grandfather's vibration, very strong, I pick up water. I have to assume he either lived over water or came over water, because that's how he's coming through with me.
Right off the bat, she's made a big miss. She probably figured European families like to pass down the male name, but my name was not passed down. When I was born, my parents were figuring on a girl because they already had a boy, my older brother, and they had picked out a whole bunch of girls' names, and when I came through as a boy, they hadn't had anything planned. And so the nurse suggested Miklos, and they liked that, and so they called me Miklos. So my name was not passed down from my father or grandfather. And notice also her technique. She moves very quickly. She moves from one thing to the next. So if you have some doubt about something she said, you don't have time to think about that doubt, because she aggressively moves right on to the next thing.
I don't know if your grandfather not only smoked and had problems in his chest, but I'm very heavy in my breathing areas. You know what I'm saying, too?
Yeah.
So it must have been a combination of that from what I'm gathering here, unless your father had a heart condition, because I seem to feel double with both of them in the chest area. Do you know what I'm saying, too? So I know there had to be complications in that. I also got to tell you, one of them must have had problems walking. I'm even feeling lower legs. I don't know if my legs swelled. I don't know if I had circulatory problems, but I'm getting a sense of the legs very strong, unless this was your grandmother, because I definitely feel it was, again, connected to your father's side from what I want to say. Real strong around you. I also got to tell you this. They're showing me a watch, Mickey. I don't know if you got your dad's watch or you got this grandfather's watch, but they're showing me a watch, really, really, really strong.
My grandfather did smoke, but she had to ask which one of the two it was. And if neither of them did, she probably would have come up with something like somebody close to them smoked. My grandfather did not have a problem with his chest. My father did have a problem with his lower legs, but didn't really have trouble walking. A good hit with the watch, but that's a fairly common thing for fathers or grandfathers to give watches to their sons or grandsons. Actually, reading my transcript, I see she made another error. The watch was not my grandfather's handed down. It was a new watch, a birthday present.
Yep.
I've also got to tell you this, please. When I'm in your dad's vibration, I get very strong in the month of April. I don't know if that was a birth or passing, but they're giving me the month of April. Very, very strong. Unless, again, this is the grandfather, because they're coming through. I'm also getting two other sounds around you, Mickey. I'm getting a very strong D sound, which also sounds male. I don't know, to be honest, if this is your family or it's your friend. I get a D sound, and I also get an H name. So I don't know if I'm hearing first or last, but those are the two initials that I seem to be getting very, very strong that I want to say on Dad's side. And unfortunately, that's sometimes it happens. Other people as well show up. Do you know what I'm saying? I got to tell you this. I'm also getting another female in the family, real strong, Mickey, with an A name. I don't know if I'm hearing an A-N sounding name or something to that effect, but it sounds like an A-N name. I don't know if it's Anna or it's A-N something or other. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Yeah. But I'm getting that sound real strong around you as well.
Complete miss on April, complete miss on D and on H. I can't think of anybody with a D or H sound in my family. But she moves right on, keeping the listener off balance. She got a hit with A. I have a cousin with an A-sounding name. In the next bit here, watch her technique, which I know other mediums use. You make a good specific guess. If you hit, you're golden. The dazzled believer won't bother to question anything else after that. If you miss, you back up, get more general, cast your net wider, work it whatever way you need to until you get a hit. And if you never get a hit, you can attribute your error to a cross vibration.
Now, I'm going to ask you one other quick thing, please. You have two children?
Nope.
Okay. Your father's saying to me two children, literally two children. Is he talking about you having to, are you part of two, or is he talking about two grandchildren?
Well, the only thing I think of is we were two kids back with grandfather.
There's just the two of you. Am I correct? Just you and your brother?
Yeah, I know there's a sister now, but she came later.
She came later then. Then there's two more than you. Okay, that's what he means. Okay. All right. Because when they say these to me, when they say a number to me, it either means two more, do you know what I'm saying, or there's the two of you. Now, so there's a long distance between you and your sister?
Yeah.
In terms of age?
Yeah. Right,
okay.
Right.
But your father was still living when she was born, though.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because that's, I have to say, because he said, yes, I knew her, even though she was very young.
She surmised that my sister was very young when my father died. She was not. She was past 20 when my father died. And if you're impressed by the fact that she knew my sister was significantly younger than me, listen to that bit again. She didn't know. I told her. I said she came later. Suzanne just asserted it strongly after I had already given her that information. You see how it works? It's very easy to forget clues and information you've already given her. And note that I was not making these observations and analyses during the session. All these deductions of mine came after I listened to the tape and made and read carefully a transcript. During the session, I tried my best to suspend my disbelief and just go along with the program.
Your father's been gone a long time. He must have also had a sister, too, Mickey, because he talks about a sister as well that there was a fondness about, is real strong. And I know he means his. I know he doesn't mean yours. That's the sense I'm going to ask. Now, I'm also going to ask you this, please. Is it your daddy or your grandfather, please, that either had a mustache or beard, Mickey?
Oh, geez, I'm trying to remember pictures of my grandfather.
Yeah.
She scores a big miss with my father's sister. My father did not have a sister. Notice how when she knows she's made an error, Because she hears no response from me, she quickly asks a question to get the client's mind off the fact that she has just made an error. I strongly suspect that the mustache and the watch questions are stock questions that she brings up on a lot of clients precisely at points when she finds herself stumbling. My father.
Which one had walking problems, Mickey?
My father.
It was your father. Okay, thank you. Because you see, when they come through and they keep giving me information, you understand what I'm saying? Your grandfather literally is identifying himself with the smoking very strong. Your father's identifying himself with the lower legs. It must have been his lower legs, though, because that's what it feels like. And this feels like something that I would feel when somebody has circulatory problems. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Literally. And I'm also getting some eye problems. Somebody had some eye problems, too, they're telling me.
Of the two people there?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Not that I know of.
Well, it also feels like it's more your father, actually, than your grandfather, from what I'm gathering here. And if it was not them, it must be his mother.
She scores something of a hit in that my father did have circulatory problems with his lower legs, but he didn't really have problems walking except once when the problem flared up. She scores a big miss with the eye problem. My father never had eye problems, and then she goes with the ploy of, oh, then it must have been somebody close to him, like his mother. In fact, my father's mother lived to be 88, and she wasn't wearing glasses at the time, so I don't think she had any eye problems either. And who in their life has not had some eye or leg problem? At some point, consider this typical channeler dialogue. I see an eye problem with your father. No, he didn't have any eye problem. Well, he did get hit in the eye once with a branch and had to go see a doctor. Yes, because that's what I'm seeing. Something's smacking him right in the face. And then the client remembers this exchange as a remarkably specific thing the medium knew. No, you fool, you told her and she pretended that she already knew. You have been played.
Again, your father, I got to tell you, is emphasizing April to me, Mickey. When they give me times, it's usually birth or passing. But I also have to tell you, this is also him giving me the month of January. So I don't know if he's talking about himself or your grandfather, but those are the two things that he gives me very strong reference to.
Still missing with April. She got a hit with January. But consider this. Given the latitude of 4 different significant events in most people's lives, births, deaths, marriages, and other miscellaneous big events, and given the latitude of 4 people, my father and grandfather and their spouses, and the latitude of 2 guesses, then out of 12 months, she's got a very good chance of getting a hit. Similar to the gambling industry, the mediumship industry is enabled by the fact that many people do not have a good understanding of probability. My friend who committed suicide.
I have to ask you this, please. Was he somewhere else when this happened?
Somewhere else from where I was?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally, was he in another state or something?
I don't know exactly where he was, but he wasn't nearby.
All right, because he shows me a big distance. I even feel like in another state.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. Sort of the question I wanted to know
Yes.
from him.
I'll tell you what I almost feel, Mickey. I almost want to say westerly. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know where it actually
You don't even
happened.
know where he was.
They didn't say much.
He shows me westerly, and he shows me, I almost want to say coastal, although sometimes it could be west, it could be near a large body of water. Do you know what I'm saying to you in the mid part? But he shows me westerly from where you are now, but it must have been near some kind of a large body of water, because that's the sense I'm getting from him.
I'm supposed to be impressed? She covers practically all bases except the Sahara Desert, and she makes liberal use of the words could be, almost, sometimes. If she was really picking up information from him, she would get specific information, like the small town of Ballard Vale behind a willow tree near a fire station. Now here comes the standard continual ploy these mediums all use, which I call time shifting. They ask a question, get an answer, and then pretend they had already gotten that information from the dead person before they asked you. But they did not. They simply asked you and repeated what you just told them while pretending it was the dead person who told them. Maybe I should call this the regurgitating technique.
Had you not seen him a while before this happened?
Right.
Because he said you hadn't connected for some time.
Right.
But you must have known him for several years.
Yeah.
Did you know him when you were very young or something?
Mm-hmm.
Because he says to me, almost grew up together. Do you know what I'm saying? I almost get a sense you almost grew up together, and it almost feels like you lost contact.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
It almost seems to me she almost uses the word almost too much. Her last sentence alone had 3 almosts. It's a way for her to mitigate wrong assertions so that she doesn't come across as clearly flat wrong too often.
I also have to tell you this. You said he took his own life?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to tell you, he must have went very fast from this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? I almost want to say boom. I mean, that's really what I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel boom, very fast. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So, however he went, this was not long and drawn out. That I can tell you.
You mean his actual death?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This was fast.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
I mean, this was not. I mean, what I'm trying to say to you is that when I get something like this is not usually like overdose or drugs or anything. Do you know what I'm saying to you? This had to be something very fast, like a gun or something, because I feel boom.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Should I comment on all this? Or?
Well, as long as you know, this is for you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And this is how they come through to me.
Yeah.
And
Well, he did. Yeah, he did. He shot himself.
because I heard boom. I mean, that's what I heard. And that's to let you know. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I will tell you honestly, your father and your grandfather are much stronger than this man, but I also pick up as well. And it's interesting because I almost feel like he knew your father too, because your father helped bring him in. Do you understand what I'm saying when they speak to me this way? In other words, your father must have known this friend of yours growing up, because your father allowed him in. But it's almost like your father said, I knew him also. So that's why I knew he was a childhood friend. You understand? Because that's the way he talks about.
She scores a big hit here. She said that my friend committed suicide by shooting himself, and he did. One could figure that was just a good guess. That is the most common way men commit suicide, but one would have to say that was a good hit. Well, one might have to say it, but I don't say it because I know better. Check that section again. She says, I almost want to say boom. She is fishing. And right after that, I very quietly say, yeah.
I almost want to say boom. I mean, that's really what I feel.
Yeah.
So that confirms it for her. And from that point on, she asserts it more vigorously and repeatedly. So you see what she's doing? She's not reading a dead person, she's reading me. She's very good at it. But most clients don't realize that unless they listen to their tape very carefully, or better yet, type out a transcript and read it. Then you can see exactly what she's doing and how the chronology of information actually unfolded. She makes good guesses, she reads your reaction, and then if she gets a positive reaction, she asserts it more vigorously. Or if it's a negative reaction, she makes adjustments or moves on quickly to something else. So I don't really give her big credit for the boom assertion. And note again the word almost. That word, by itself, transforms the supposed assertion, I almost want to say boom, into, in effect, the question, was it boom? Then, from my reaction, she can deduce the answer to that question, all the while pretending she had just made an assertion rather than asked a question, which is what she really did. Also, she made a big miss on asserting that my father knew this person. It's pretty logical to surmise that a good childhood friend of mine would be known by my father. But as it happens, my father did not know him. And the reason is he rarely, if ever, came over to my house. We spent a lot of time at school together because our last names were alphabetically right next to each other, so we always used to sit next to each other in homeroom. And we were both into sports, so we spent time together doing sports at school. And when we did play outside of school, we played over his house because he lived near a woodsy area where there were more things to do. He never even met my father. So she is flat wrong about my father bringing him in, which indicates she is not in touch with my dead friend, but only making logical observations, like a person's good childhood friend is likely to have been known by the father of that person also.
But I know that your father knew this man, because your father was the one that helped bring him in. He says, yes, I knew him as well. Do you know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
When I say, yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand. Not, yeah, you're right. I am deliberately trying to stay non-committal in order to prevent her from constantly fishing for information and confirmation. I want her to succeed or fail on her own alleged ability. She also said she was very strongly picking up the name of Paul around the vibration of this friend of mine, but I knew of no Paul around him. He did have a best friend who lived right next door to him and grew up with him, but his name was not Paul, nor did his name sound even remotely like Paul. My grandfather.
The biggest thing I want to know about from my grandfather is what was the deal with him in the Army? He got his rank taken away, and he never talked about it much at all, hardly. Something to do, bucking the establishment. And
that's exactly what I hear. I hear political. I hear political.
So does he say anything else about that? Because I was so curious as to what went on.
Hold on a minute here. Honestly, I don't think it's in any more detail, and I don't think he ever did speak about it anyway, but by the way, just for the record, I don't think he ever told anybody. But I feel it was what I would call political, meaning that he was either against the authority, do you know what I'm saying to you? He's either against what he was told to do or something to that aspect. But this is definitely what I would say political in nature.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like I would say a rebel act.
Yeah.
That's really what it feels.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to tell you this, it distinctly had to do with one other person.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that would be his commanding officer, do you know what I'm saying to you, or somebody who pulled rank on him. But that's the sense I feel.
She's trying to pass off a general comment as a specific one by merely inserting the word distinctly. A tall sergeant would be distinct information. Distinctly somebody means nothing. If I ask you who was it and you answer distinctly somebody, you're not giving me information worth anything. Actually, the issue did not have to do with one other distinct person, but with a group of people. I would have been astounded if she came up with a specific issue, but I knew she wouldn't, and this is something that is of great interest to me and of great humanitarian and historical significance, but she picked up nothing. My grandfather was a 3-star general in World War II in the Hungarian branch of the Nazi army. He started to complain about the treatment of Jewish prisoners, and for that he got his rank taken away. This is what my mother told me. I'd always wanted to know more, but never did find out anything more. Suzanne gave me no significant information at all, even though she was supposedly picking up vibrations from my grandfather. Also, she mistakes my grandfather being on my father's side. It was my mother's father that we're talking about here, not my father's father. I didn't even know my father's father. I'd only seen pictures of him. Why, if she's communicating with the dead, would she get information from a grandfather I never knew instead of the one I did know? My father.
Now, I'm going to talk to you about your dad because I'm hearing one other thing about him. Were you around when your dad went over?
Well, that's what I want to talk to him about.
All right, because I'll tell you why. All right, when they say things like that to me, I know it's an issue. You understand? Now, was this an upset for you? Because I have to assume there was an issue because your father brings it up to me.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I hear him say. He said to me he understood.
Yeah.
So I have to assume whatever was going on, do you know what I'm saying to you? He says he understands. So I have to assume you weren't there.
Right.
I mean, that's the way it is. And when they say to me that way, I have to tell you, first of all, I got to tell you something. When I'm in your dad's vibration, Mickey, I pick up what I would call, and I want you to understand that this is not derogative, but I get some kind of a wall. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So I don't know if there were issues with you and your father before you went, or the fact that you hadn't seen him or something. Do you know what I'm saying to you? But that's how I'm picking it up. But I have to tell you something. From the way I feel from your father, it's almost a sense of like, I feel like he understands, and I almost want to say that I don't think that this is something you need to hold on to anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying to you?
That's what he's telling you?
That's what I'm hearing from him, yeah. And he feels that this is something that you can let go now. Because it's had to be something you've held on to for a very long time. I wouldn't be picking it up so strong. Do you know what I'm saying?
Something I was...
Whatever it is, he's saying, it's okay, I understand. And and when they say things like this to me, it's almost like his way of saying that maybe you need to forgive yourself in this, maybe you need to not be so hard on yourself. Whatever it is, I can't tell you the specifics. All I can say is that from what I gather from him is that he understands that you were not there. And I know you weren't there because that was the first thing he said to me, that you were not around. And when we're not around very often, when there is a transition, particularly of a parent or something like this, there's always this feeling of unfinished business. Do you know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
And it's always one of the first things that I will pick up in that connection. So whatever went by, whatever transpired, it's his way of saying that he understands and it's really okay, and you don't have to hold on to this anymore.
Suzanne is flat wrong in saying there was a wall between me and my father. Of all the people in my life, my father is the one for whom there was no wall between us. And the biggest miss of all, she is telling me that my father is saying to forgive myself for not being there. That was a loaded question, for which I adopted a non-committal response to see if she would jump to the conclusion that it was an issue, when in fact it was not. What happened was my father had what seemed to be a heart attack. He was in the hospital. We thought he was going to be okay. I went to work the next day. He died during the day of what turned out to be instead an aortic aneurysm. So I wasn't there when he died, but I don't feel the least bit guilty about it. It was not a problem. It was not an issue. But she assumes it was. If she were really communicating with my father, she would not be picking up my father telling me to forgive myself. Note that when she says, "Do you know what I'm saying to you?" and I answer affirmatively, I'm answering that I know what she is saying to me, not that she is right, although she may be reading it that way, and of course she's supposed to be reading dead people, not me. And also note that her excessive use of the phrase, "Do you know what I'm saying?" is her relentless effort to nudge me emotionally to get me on board with what she's saying. Also, she said that the first thing my father said to her was that I was not there when he died. She obscures, consciously or subconsciously, the fact that she had asked me that directly right off the bat and then read my reaction. That's how she found that information out, from me, not from my father communicating with her. I asked Suzanne another loaded question. Did my father feel responsible for an accident that happened when he was teaching a gym class? And her answer was essentially yes.
The fact that he was always so responsible and that this happened, I would probably say, made it even more difficult on him.
Fact is, my father had no responsibility for that accident whatsoever. He was teaching a gym class indoors, while a bunch of us kids, waiting for the next class, were outdoors climbing pretty high on a tree. One kid grabbed a dead branch, the branch broke, he fell and broke his legs. My father was only involved in that he called for an ambulance after we ran in to tell him what happened. So again, Suzanne missed a perfect opportunity to prove that she is in touch with my father. She did not say, "No, he didn't feel responsible and he's pointing to a dead branch." Instead, she just made general logical observations.
Hold on a minute. My next client's here. Hang on. Mike? Yeah, come on down. I'm not quite finished, but you can come on down.
I asked her if my father had anything to say about the huge amount of time he spent doing something in the countryside when he was a teenager. She responded by saying she doesn't get much on that, but it related somehow to his personality trait of keeping things inside. Absolute horse manure. First of all, my father was not that kind of person. And secondly, what my father did for hours on end in the countryside was very unusual. So I figured she would not guess what it was. I knew she would not guess it. She didn't guess it. Another perfect opportunity for her to prove she was communicating with my father, but she failed. By the way, she had scored another miss, referring to my father not being able to move near the end due to his leg problems.
With all the physical activity, he said the fact that he was not able to move toward the end must have been very hard on him.
No, my father was still playing tennis right up until before he died. Whether conscious or subconscious, note her clever technique. She uses the phrase, "must have been." In midstream, she changed her assertion into a question. A genuine assertion would be, He said the fact that he was not able to move towards the end was very hard on him. Instead, she says, he said the fact that he was not able to move towards the end must have been very hard on him. So if my response is positive, she plays her statement as though it were a powerful assertion. If my response is negative, she plays it as simply a question she's exploring. Trouble for Suzane. I told her that I was a skeptical person in terms of what she's doing here. Is there something specific she can tell me about my father that would show me for sure it's my father?
Well, I can tell you this: whoever comes through me is connected to you. There's never a question of that.
But if he would say what his nickname was for my mother or something.
They don't usually do that stuff. What they'll do is they identify by a whole variety of ways, Mickey, and...
But the generalities don't identify them, though. It's only a specific thing that only he would know, that you wouldn't know.
Right,
Would convince me that this is really my father coming through.
Right, okay. I want you to hold a sec, okay?
At this point, she's realizing she's got a problem on her hands, so she tells her next client to step outside, please, and she's going to try to deal with me knowing that I'm not really taking all this in like she wants me to.
Do we not start when I finish this part? Okay. Okay, just a couple things here, Mickey. Let me just sort of say this to you real quick. When they come through, they identify by different variety of ways. Do you know what I'm saying to you? When your grandfather came through and your father came through, both of them came through very much together, and they identified by different things. So what I'm trying to say to you is that your grandfather identified himself by the watch, he identified himself by smoking. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Your father identified himself much more with a sense of the legs for me, the fact of not being able to move. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Toward the ends. Those are specific identifiable things that I will pick up.
But he didn't. My grandfather didn't identify himself with the smoking. You questioned who it was, my father or my grandfather. So you
when
can't...
I said to you at the beginning, both of them were coming through at the same time, and one of them identified themselves by very strong smoke and the lungs, the smell of the smoke.
Yeah.
So that's what happens is that, you see, when you have two people that come through at the same time, I told you very often I'll get cross information from both of them at the same time, and how, as they come through, what happens is how I'm able to get a stronger sense of each one of them individually, do you know what I'm saying to you, is the way that they identify. So if your grandfather identifies himself by smoking and by the watch, I know that that's his vibration separate from your father. Do you know what I'm saying to you? When your father came through, he identified himself by problems with the legs. What happens is that divides the separation of the vibration for me, so that I know who I'm dealing with. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, but these things don't clearly identify them as my grandfather or my father. In other words, see, I can look back at the things you said, and a lot of the things don't match at all. For example, the watch was not a big watch; it was a regular-sized watch.
Well, all I can tell you is that this is what it looks like when he identifies himself to me. So let me see if I can get some other information here on them. Hold on a minute here. See, they're so strong together that sometimes it's hard to separate them.
Well, they can, either one, they should say something that I would know it's them. And the watch and the leg doesn't really do it.
Okay, first of all, I just got to ask you this, Mickey, one other thing here. When they came through at the beginning, they said the name was passed down. Was it your grandfather's name or your father's name? Because that will also help me.
It wasn't passed down.
Okay.
See that to me.
Not the first to the middle was not passed down?
Right. My first name was not passed down.
Was it not the first or the middle was not passed down?
No.
Okay,
I don't even have a middle name.
Hold on a minute. Okay. Then I want to ask you this. It wasn't passed down to your dad's brother either?
No.
Okay.
No, my name was an accident.
Okay.
They expected a girl.
All right.
So they got my name from the nurse.
Hold on a minute. Then I want to ask you this. It was not passed from grandfather or to your father or to your uncle.
Right.
Okay. I'm not talking about your name. I'm talking about their name.
Their name.
Yes.
She had said.
But I will tell you this one. One of them must have your name because they tell me your name is passed down.
Suzane is just plain lying, trying to wiggle out of her error, and she's banking on my not remembering exactly what she said.
Your father's name was not passed down from his grandfather, or your uncle was not passed down from his grandfather?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because they may not be talking about you, man. They may be identifying themselves by themselves. Okay, hold on a minute. Because they keep coming back to the name, that's why I'm asking you. Because there's a reason why.
But the name wouldn't prove anything to me, because I don't know some of these names of fathers and grandfathers.
Well, you see, that's but that's, you have to understand, if you don't know their names, it makes it very difficult. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Because I don't know how they're going to identify from me who they're going to come through. But I will ask.
No, but I could just, if you could just find out from my father, what was his nickname for my mother?
They won't. They don't. It doesn't work that way.
Why not?
It's like I can't tell you why not. It just.
But that would. But I don't understand. That would identify him.
I understand where you're coming from, but I'm telling you, I don't know how they're going to give information, Mickey. I identify by a lot of different ways. They don't always identify by nicknames. Sometimes they identify by initials. Sometimes they identify by people connected to them, not even themselves. But I have to ask you one other thing here. There is one other sound that I do keep hearing here from your father, and I'll tell you what I'm hearing in terms of a sound to me. It sounds like a very strong F-sounding name. I don't know if it's an F-A-sounding name or an F-R-sounding name, but I keep hearing that somewhere between the two of them. So I don't know if that's one of their names or it's the uncle, but I can tell you it has an F-sounding name to me. So I don't know if it would be F-R or F-A, and I don't know.
I don't understand what that has to do with anything. You're trying to identify another person?
No, I'm just telling you that when you're asking me information, this is what I'm hearing from him, and this is the sound that I'm hearing. And
but if I ask for information for a nickname and he's playing word games.
And I'm telling you that it doesn't work that way, Mickey. It doesn't work that way. I don't know how to explain it to you. Just because you ask, I don't know how they're going to identify. They identify by a variety of ways. And they do not usually go by nicknames. Usually they come by given names, or they identify themselves by people that are connected to them. I'm just telling you there's a variety of different ways the way they work. And I know you're expecting it to be like a computer printer, and I'm telling you...
No, I'm not a computer printer. Just one little thing that would prove that, that you couldn't possibly know that...
This is not about a proof game. This is not about proof. I don't know how they're going to talk, and I don't know how they're going to identify information here. That's all I can tell you.
She had said at one point that they want to identify themselves.
Because, they like to let you know they're coming through. And
so if my father wants to identify himself to me, it's very, very simple. Why in the world is he playing word games and speaking in riddles? And the really amusing thing is that she's had bad luck in the letters she's guessed. Because F and FR, I can't place those anywhere in my family. So she's making unlucky guesses on top of everything else. At one point, I asked her if my father was disappointed I didn't pursue a career in music. I was hoping she would make the logical assumption that my father was very involved with music. And she did in fact make that assumption. But he was not involved with music. So this was again clear proof that she's not receiving information from my father. And notice that this question is not an outright lie on my part. It gives her the opportunity to fail or to succeed. I gave her the opportunity to succeed, but she failed.
To kind of wrap up here, I was looking, I don't believe that dead people talk to us. I believe we can talk to them, but I don't think they talk to us in any actual way.
They don't speak to us the way that you and I speak, because it's a different form of communication completely. But listen, you're totally you totally can have your beliefs. You can have respect of your beliefs.
This is your opportunity to prove yourself.
But I'm not here to prove myself, Mickey. I'm not
why
here to prove myself, because that's not what it's about. This is not about proving this does or doesn't exist. And if you really read my book, you will know that...
I know, you said that.
I said that. That's what this is about. It's in the experience.
But it's so easy to say, I get a list of like 17, 18 things in front of me that anything my father could say, what was it that he called my mother? What was it that he used to do in the woods for hours at a time? All these things that could just instantly, easily identify him. Because you can't relate that, you can't get that information, that proves to me you can't do it. I mean that this is not, I'm not putting you down as a human being, but I just think your whole belief system is as many religions are completely wrong, and it's very subjective. You're playing like a guessing game or a Rorschach game, and a number of the things you said were quite wrong. So it can't be true.
I guess, and that's just your feeling on it then. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, what can I say? What can I say? I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, what else is there to say? You would have floored me if you would have come up with what the nickname was my father used. And you would have floored me with any number of things. You guessed right on my grandfather's smoking and the fact that my friend committed suicide by shooting himself.
But of course, that's a big guess, right? It could have committed suicide any other way, right?
Yeah. Well, shooting himself that's a common way. I don't know. I think that's the most statistically common way.
Okay, I think we'll call this a day, Mickey.
Yeah.
All right.
You don't want to argue for free for another hour, do you? No, you got to cry in there.
You know something? I'm going to return your money. This is on the policy, okay? I'm going to return your check, and I'm going to return your tape. I'm not even going to give you the tape. I'm going to return this, and we're going to call this off.
Oh.
All right.
I'd rather you keep the money and I get the tape.
There's no rather. That's how I work, and you know, and that's what this is about. And you're all about proving, and that's not what this is about. And I will tell you something: the more you try to prove, the more you're going to lose. Because if you would have not blocked the door, no, wait a minute, that's it. We're calling it a day.
Can I say one last little thing? I guess not.
She did not send me the tape, but of course I already had the tape because I taped it from my end. You're not dealing with a chimp here. I anticipated this might happen. Takeaways. For believers and people trying to make up their minds about channelers to the dead, I do not belittle your grief or your desire for reconciliation or communication with deceased loved ones. And I do not deny that some people may have experienced profound healing through Suzane's help as a therapist. But at the same time, what she is doing is a charade and is profoundly immoral, making money off of people's grief. I had said back then that I wasn't putting her down as a person, but now, years later, knowing more about this industry, I will put her down. She and her ilk, like James Van Praagh, are despicable. I've found that they all use the same techniques. They ask leading questions, use high percentage generalities, they fish, read reactions, skip over misses, focus on hits, use information they got earlier, etc., etc. And they depend very much on people's natural inclination to provide the connections. This is the so-called Barnum effect, where characterizations of individuals are perceived to be specifically true and insightful, even though the statements are so broad they could actually apply to almost anyone. But Mickey, she was accurate on a number of things. Your grandfather smoked. Your father had a lower leg problem. The watch. The A sound. The month of January. The sound of boom. Yeah, but she was flat wrong on other things. My name passed down. A problem in my grandfather's chest. My father's chest. His problem walking. A watch passed down. A large watch. The month of April, a D sound, an H sound, 2 children, sister very young at father's death, eye problems, month of April again, grew up together, father brought him in, the name of Paul, the army issue with one other person, a wall between my father and me, my father advising me to forgive myself, the accident being difficult on my father's countryside activity, my father kept things inside, father involved with music, and off tape, a J.O. name, and I knew this friend's sister well. What's the tally? 6 hits, 25 misses. That's a mere 19% hit rate. That is not impressive. Dr. Gary Schwartz? And most important, her hit rate on specific knowledge that only I and the deceased person could possibly know was, as I knew it would be, 0%. Suzane may be a good therapist with lots of good valid advice, but the belief system which she presents is not true. She cannot tell me what my father's nickname was for my mother. She is not in touch with deceased people. She's in touch with the deepest yearnings of the living. I hope people have some solid takeaways from this video, such as, you are being dishonest if you focus only on the hits and ignore the misses. You are being naive if you think you can't be fooled. This craft of mediumship has been highly developed over centuries. You are being lazy if you read and watch only the pro material and none of the con material. You are being sophomoric if you think this video says nothing about other mediums who you think might be legitimate. Technically, yes, you're right. One failure does not disprove all mediums. But really, how many sheep do you have to toss off a cliff to prove they cannot fly? After the first 100 or so go splat, a reasonable person comes to a conclusion. If this alleged ability of channelers were true, it would have been long since easily been proven by science. I watched a TV program some years ago. As I remember it, a psychic approached a woman on the street and asked her if she believes she has psychic ability. She said, nah, she doesn't think so. He said, well, maybe you haven't given it the chance it deserves. Tell you what, I want you to concentrate as hard as you can on any 3-digit number and try to project that number to me mentally. He held up a blank index card facing himself in his left hand and a pencil in his right hand. As the woman concentrated on a number, he closed his eyes, concentrated, and scribbled down a number on the card. Now, this woman was pretty clearly not a plant, and the number she thought of was only in her head, so no one else could have relayed the information to the psychic. Okay, what was the number you were thinking of? 362. 362. What made you think of that number? No reason, it just came into my head. He turns the card around, and it's 362. Drop the mic, psychic communication has been proven. Or has it? The program went on to show what really happened. When the psychic was scribbling the number down, he was actually just pretending to scribble it down. He wrote nothing down. During the few seconds when she told him what the number was, and he asked her what made her think of that number, he held the card in his left hand, with the pencil in his right hand clearly out away from the card. But glued to the side of the thumb of his left hand was a small piece of pencil lead, and with his left thumb hidden from sight behind the card, he had scribbled 362 in with his thumb, after she told him what the number was, and then turned the card around to show her. So that's how it was done. I thought this was a very clever and beautifully executed magic trick, and that it was a great lesson for people not to exclaim, "There is no possible natural explanation for this," when there is. If you believe in the value of the spiritual world over the physical world, I agree with you. But there are limits, and getting concrete information psychically from dead people goes beyond those limits. I'm not claiming there's no afterlife, only that there is no tangible communication from there to here. I personally do believe in the probability of an afterlife. I think it depends on the existence of God question. And that's a question I assessed in another video called Defending Soft Theism Against Atheists. It's a video that explores the great philosophical questions about the existence of God, but in layman's terms. I hope you check it out. Thanks for watching.